Welcome to a Pokemon Pocket tier list and best decks update. This is not going to be my opinion. This is based off of objective analytics, and do not worry, this game is not inherently super competitive. There's no ranked mode, so if your deck's not here, let's say it's at the bottom of the top decks page, something like a Pinsir deck or a Slowbro deck, even Golduck, you could still have fun playing whatever Pokemon deck you want. But if you want to see what the best performing decks are and the best way to play them, that is why you're here. So we're going to start off at the bottom of the tier list. Boom. Tier 4. So these decks are based off of tournament topping decks in the last 400 topping community tournament deck lists. I know that's a mouthful. Now, what is a topping tournament deck? Anything that gets about top 30% of an event. So it is scaling based off of the player size of the tournament. So we're going to start off with Exeggutor at a power level of 3. Let's check this out. Exeggutor EX deck breakdown. These are the stats on how the deck is being played, but you also want to check out the deck list and a sample deck list like this one playing Alakazam. Even though it's not the most popular way to play it, it did top 32 of a 200-player event. But if we look at the other versions, this one's playing Caterpie and Metapod. This one is playing Solo Exeggutor. This one's playing Weepin' Bell and Victory Bell. So the consensus on how to play this deck is not made up, which is why the stats are just showing Exeggutor. So let's focus on just that. Why would you want to play this? The reason I would want to play this is for a few reasons. I think the biggest one being Erica. Erica being the ability to heal yourself for 50 damage is massive. Healing any Pokemon for 50, that is a grass, that's nuts. And also Exeggutor's health being 160. So if we click on the search here to see the most popular used cards, we could see Pikachu, EX, and Mewtwo are big ones. Mewtwo deals 150 damage, so the Exeggutor will be able to survive that. That is definitely a big deal. And then also being able to use Erica to heal through multiple Pikachu shocks. That is why I'd want to be stalling out a Pikachu deck and try out Exeggutor. Let's now move on to Alakazam. What is good with Alakazam? This is the most prevalent way to play Alakazam. We have Psychic, which deals 60 damage plus an additional 30 for each attached energy onto the opponent's active Pokemon. And for the context of every deck, it really is going to be centered around the most prevalent Pokemon being the Pikachu EX and the Mewtwo. As with the Alakazam, in order to kill a Pikachu, it needs to deal 120 damage. So if it deals 30 additional damage per attached energy, the Circle Circuit ability requires 2 energy. So 2 energy on Pikachu means the Alakazam perfectly one-shots that Pikachu for that exact 120 damage. But what about Mewtwo, which requires 150 damage to kill it? Well, to use Mewtwo, if this at least has 3 or 4 energy on the Mewtwo, the Alakazam is then going to also be able to one-shot the Mewtwo, dealing 150 damage. A problem is going to be is when the Mewtwo is only at 2 energy and not 3, then it's going to require more than 1 attack in order to kill a Mewtwo. And while you're stalling, you're going to have the protection of Weezing, which paired up with Koga is absolutely nuts. Now, it's important to know with Weezing, you don't actually put Dark Energy in your deck unless the player is specifying otherwise, because you are going to just use its passive ability, Gas Leak, for a free 10 damage every single turn, your turn and their turn. And after the Weezing takes a hit or two, you get to pull it back with Koga, then replay it back in the field as you're building up energy, getting ready with your Alakazam. So here are example deck lists. This is a top 16 of a recent event. Let's zoom in. Here is second place, top 8, and see this one is not playing with Weezing, so that's why it's good to see the different ways the deck is being played. And then here is another top 8 build. Let's now move on down to the other deck, Machamp EX. Let's see what's going on with the Machamp. Now, the fighting type is a powerful type that many Pokemon are weak to. Let's see. Pikachu is weak to fighting, and Mewtwo is weak to dark, so that doesn't count. What else is weak to fighting besides, just the electric being weak to fighting, I think, is a big one. So let's read this. Machamp is going to be dealing 120 damage. We already know that's going to one-shot the Pikachu. Now, what about a Machoke? If we slam a Pikachu twice with strength, it's only going to deal 100 damage. But because the Pikachu is weak to fighting, it's going to be a 2-shot for the Stage 1 Machoke. Now, let's look at the health. We have 180 health, so the Pikachu has to Lightning Strike it twice for a perfect lethal, but if you have 1 potion, it will then turn the Pikachu into 3 attacks. Now, what about Mewtwo? Mewtwo's a 150 damage, so the Machamp will survive the Mewtwo, and unfortunately, the Mega Punch, even when boosted up by a Giovanni, it's only going to deal 130 damage, with the boost being not enough to take out a Mewtwo. Thus, it's going to take 2 punches to hit Mewtwo. Now, most decks are not going to be able to one-shot Mewtwo, and that's why Mewtwo is a very good deck. So it does not mean that you're bad because you can't one-shot it. Pikachu is the best deck, as we get to that later in this video, and it also cannot one-shot the Mewtwo. Now, let's see the example list here. They're also playing with Kangaskhan. Kangaskhan, right? Kangaskhan. And the majority are not playing it. 57% are not using it, but almost half are using the Kangaskhan. So at 100 health, it could block some attacks while your Machamp is building up into your bench. It's also got a very simple 1 energy ability. A big downside with this I see is the retreat cost of 3. You could have scenarios where this is your active Pokemon and you're ready to whip out your Machamp, but the opponent is purposely not attacking your Kangaskhan because they do not want you to freely tag in your Machamp and get punched to death. So what else is this? Is going to be 60 damage randomly for 1 coin flip. That's kind of pretty good, I guess. And let's see, it's a 100 health base Pokemon. I think that it being a meat shield is its biggest benefit. Here is a build where they're using Mankey instead of the Kangaskhan. And what else? We have a Marohawk. So there is a bit of versatility on the way to play Machamp. So make sure you check out the decks there on Pokemon Meta. Let's move on to the next one. We now have Blastoise. Blastoise EX. Why would you play a water deck in a meta where electric is going to zap you to death? We're weak to electric, right? Well, the Pikachu dealing 90 damage to your Blastoise is going to instead be 110 damage. Now, that doesn't turn it into a one-shot, so it's not that big of a deal. The problem is, though, you take 110 damage, you then use Potion to heal back to, off that damage, and then Pikachu attacks again, and you still die. That's a big problem. Had we not been weak to electric, it would take Pikachu 3 attacks if we were to use at least 1 potion. But if you're playing a water deck, I think one of the biggest benefits is going to be using the Misty. Misty is so random, though. It's a 50% chance to do absolutely nothing. You miss your first coin flip, you get no energy whatsoever. But if you randomly start flipping a bunch of heads with Misty, you have a water deck that's able to pretty much beat any single deck that exists. The Hydro Bazooka dealing just a base 100 damage is not so good. That's obviously not going to kill a Pikachu or a Mewtwo, but if you have at least 2 extra water energy, which means even a late game Misty could be very powerful on your Blastoise, you're gaining 60 more damage. So with 5 energy onto the Blastoise, are we one-shotting? Yeah, buddy, we are one-shotting the Mewtwo, and we are one-shotting that Pikachu. So just draw the Misties and get lucky with the coin flips. I guess that's all I could really say about this deck is cope and hope that you flip heads, because that's all I could see with this deck doing well. We have this one with Kangaskhan. We have Meowth, Chansey, Snorlax, random meat shields in the deck. This one's got Mewtwo and Articuno. I wouldn't read too much into the additional Pokemon being different because I really do view them as just meat shields. That's it. I don't think that this deck, for example, is using psychic energy. Probably not. Once the players are submitting what energy they're using, that would be a bit more helpful. But I think that simply a 2 retreat at 120 health, we don't care about the attack, and that's it for that. Now, let's move on to another deck. We have Articuno EX. This is a very interesting deck. This one is mostly being used as just Articuno EX. In the physical card game, you have to mulligan until you have a basic Pokemon in your opening hand. And every time you mulligan, your opponent gets to draw an additional card optionally at the start of the duel. That's crazy. But Pokemon Pocket is hard programmed to guarantee a base Pokemon in your hand. And it's not auto-mulliganing. It's not asking the opponent, hey, we auto-mulligan them 5 times. You like to draw 5 cards. Nope, just automatically, you get a base Pokemon, no mulligan downside. I really like that effect of Pokemon Pocket, but I feared that it would maybe be abusable. If not abusable right now, it might be a nightmare in the future where a new top-tier deck will simply be a replacement for Articuno Solo. So what's so good about this? Let's first see some of the decks if anyone is playing additional. It's pretty much just it. Oh, this one is playing with Greninja. Interesting. We have Articuno here. There's some Greninja with the Articuno, so a little bit of a mix. So it's either played by itself mostly or with some Greninja. And the Greninja is going to be good because it's going to have the base ability of, from the back row, swing for 20 damage onto anything, including a bench Pokemon. And what's amazing about this deck, same thing as the Blastoise, is whipping out that early Misty. If you could turn, so in the physical card game, you're not allowed to attack in the first turn no matter what. But in Pokemon Pocket, they took that away. You just can't gain energy unless you use a card like Misty or other future cards similar to this. So if you flip 3 coins heads on your very first turn, you have Articuno blasting for 80 damage on their main Pokemon, plus 10 damage onto their bench. This straight up, I think this has the highest ceiling of just being able to beat anything. The most likely, yeah, because it takes a while to build up the Blastoise. So this right away, Blizzard blasting with Misty. So if you really like gambling, this is going to be your best deck and most fun deck to play. Let's keep on going. And by the way, one of my favorite decks in the game are not on the tier list, and that does not deter me from wanting to play it. Dragonite, I love this deck so much. It's very difficult to play to build up the 4 energy, and 2 of them have to be different. You deal 200 damage randomly. It's got some tournament tops, but not enough recent ones, and not enough of them to be considered a top tier deck. But again, I would still play this and enjoy it and have fun with it. Just know that it's not considered top tier performing. All right, back to the tier list here. So that is tier 4. Let's now move on to tier 3. Arcanine EX is a very interesting deck where it hard counters Pikachu. It's got one of the most rogue decks that have a high win rate, a positive win rate against Pikachu, but then don't do well against something like Mewtwo. So Mewtwo clobbers this. It's got the 150 health, so you have the Mewtwo one-shotting it. That's bad. But it's got that perfect 120 damage for just 3 energy. And you get that 3 energy very quickly through the Moltres. You have the Moltres in the active spot, put on your fire energy. So one good Moltres, you have the Arcanine possibly on your 3rd turn, already one-shotting a Pikachu with that Inferno onrush. That is nuts. It's a small downside that it deals 20 damage to itself, but it's mostly just going to be sweeping a Pikachu deck. But again, you play this to beat Pikachu, but then you start losing to the other decks is going to be the main downside on what's holding it back. But if your friend is playing Pikachu and they're challenging you to a duel, and you got some Arcanines in your collection, whip this deck out for an easy win. It's not super easy. You just have like a 55 to 60% win rate against Pikachu is what I'd say the main benefit of playing this. Now, even though that Pikachu is the most popular among topping tournament decks, Mewtwo is actually a more popular deck entering tournaments. There's more people playing Mewtwo, but there's more people topping tournaments with Pikachu. It's probably purely for the aesthetic reason and not due to the power, but Mewtwo is very powerful. It is the 2nd best deck, as you'll see soon. Let's keep on going. So Arcanine, a sleeper hit deck. We then have a power level of 10 at the same as Arcanine EX. Marowak EX, get whacking. Holy moly, this deck is super random. Flip 2 coins, 80 damage for each heads. So what's the math on that? That's a 25% chance to one-shot a Mewtwo, and you're going to give the Mewtwo player a heart attack. So again, if you want to focus on gambling and having fun and, you know, that random chance, would you rather have a Mewtwo mirror match, which you also need to get lucky to win, or just play a different deck and get lucky in a different way, and then you got to play a deck that's not Mewtwo and you clap them up with the Bone Meringue. So the most prevalent way to play this is going to be with Hitmonlee, and then we have Sandshrew and Sandslash. So if we highlight 60%, the majority are not playing Sandslash. Hitmonlee, the majority are playing it, so 40% are not playing it, 60% are in fact playing it. Stretch Kick, 80 health, base Pokemon. This does 30 damage to one of your opponent's benched Pokemon. A lot of people like to build up their good Pokemon on the bench, and the Hitmonlee is going to knock them out. That's going to be very interesting, very nice. So if they get really unlucky with the base Pokemon they're trying to evolve, Hitmonlee through 2 attacks is going to very likely kill it. Like the Sandshrews at 70 health, actually. But especially with a lot of Pokemon being weak to fighting, that's when the Hitmonlee is really going to be going in. All right, what is good here? Let's see. Oh, wait, I'm actually not sure 100%. I don't think this does extra damage to a weakness because I think it's specific 30. I think it's got to be tied to the attack itself. That's something I'd have to test. I know Greninja, I'm pretty sure Greninja does not deal additional damage if you're weak to water, but I'm not so sure on the stretch kick. So if you want to verify that in the comments, let me know. So here are the top deck lists. This is a Sand Slash Marowak with 1 Hitmonlee. This is using Diglett and Mankey. So it is important to check out the deck list yourself because even though this is the most popular tournament topping way within pretty much the last week of tournament tops and how to play it, there are still many diverse ways to play the decks. And I just messaged our developer to expand the percentages because of how many versatile ways there are to play these decks. So it'd be good to, see it all, even if it's a low percent on how the deck is being played. Let's now move on over to Blaine. This is, I would say, one of the fastest decks in the game and the most free-to-play friendly. So if you hop in early and you just want a quick deck to clap people up with, Blaine is your deck. The deck is all about using and abusing Blaine. During this turn, you deal additional 30 extra damage. So your Ninetales dealing 120, well, what's got 120 health? You got to memorize this stuff. It's the Pikachu. One-shot Pikachu at Ninetales, that's faster than an Arcanine at just 2 fire energy. So in many ways, this could be better than an Arcanine deck. The unfortunate part is the Ninetales also gets one-shot by a Pikachu at only 90 health, and then you got to have the luck of having a Blaine plus the Ninetales ready to do it. Otherwise, you can get Rapidash for 70 damage. 2 Blaines, 2 Rapidash attacks. That's going to, unfortunately, deal just 140 damage. So that is not enough to kill a Mewtwo, but 1 Blaine, 2 Rapidashes, so that's going to be 110 damage. That will be able to kill a Pikachu. And what else we have? Well, 40, actually 110. That still isn't enough. I guess you need 2 Blaines, 2 Rapidashes. But yeah, I would say this is not so good of a matchup against Pikachu now that I'm looking at it, besides the Ninetales being able to one-shot it. So keep your Ninetales in the back, get Rapidash on anything that's not a Pikachu, and then whip out the Ninetales with the Blaine to kill them. We got a Farfetch'd D, which is actually one of the best base Pokemon in terms of damage. Being able to deal 40 damage when a lot of base Pokemon deal just 20, like the Ponyta, it's essentially having a weakness to your attack, but not having to rely on any Pokemon being weak to your type. So that's why the Farfetch'd D is a big clapper. I mean, compare Ponyta to Farfetch. Farfetch will 2-shot the Ponyta. Ponyta will 3-shot the Farfetch. Let's see the sample deck list here. I think a lot of them are going to be incredibly similar. There's no real different ways to play this besides, wow, as I say that, we took out the Rapidash. Yeah, 10% not playing Rapidash, so this being one of the mad lads choosing to not play the Rapidash, as we want to focus on just Ninetales one-shotting the Pikachu. I think that is definitely a good strategy. Playing Meowth, by the way, in their deck list. So the Meowth is going to be able to payday draw a card, so help you draw into the Blaine, help you draw into the Ninetales. What else is good? They got Rapidash. Otherwise, the majority are playing it. Magmar also an option. Let's see another deck list here. We now have Charizard EX, which is fighting with Starmie for becoming Tier 2. The Tier 2 threshold being a power level of 30. So let's see what's good here. Let's open up Charizard EX. Charizard EX is simply a very powerful 200 damage Crimson Storm. One of the most powerful abilities in the game. Blastoise could get bigger, but Blastoise needs what? Like 7 energy to deal more damage in the Crimson Storm? 200, what does not, everything dies to this, right? It kills everything. It's going to kill a Pikachu. It's going to kill a Mewtwo. It's going to kill a mirror match Charizard. So if you get really lucky with your Moltres being able to attach multiple fire energies onto your Charmander quickly on or your Charmeleon, and then whip out that Charizard EX. One of the biggest downsides to this deck is simply you have to evolve your Charmander twice. You could have something maybe in the future, maybe the mini set coming out is going to give us a way to search for Charizard or search for Charmeleon. Or there's a card called Rare Candy in the Pokemon TCG, which lets you skip Charmeleon. You can go from Charmander to Charizard in one evolve plus a Rare Candy. So Charizard plus Rare Candy, you get this out early and get blasted with your Moltres. Do I expect a card like Rare Candy to come out in Pokemon Pocket soon? Probably not. I don't think they're going to want you skipping the evolutions. Instead, they'll give you a way to search for the Charmeleon or Charizard. So let's see the other ways to play this. So if you like damage, this is the deck to play. This is the #1 consistent damage deck. Blast people for 200. We got this Mad Lad teching in Arcanine also in there. So as you're talking about, the Arcanine's going to have the ability to one-shot the Pikachu, and then once the Arcanine dies, I guess you whip out the Charizard for a game. Just one-shot anyone with that 200 damage, absolute madness. How big is a Snorlax, by the way? Let's get snoring. Snorlax 150, of course, is going to one-shot that. Why does Snorlax have the same health as a Mewtwo? That's not cool. There's got to be a Snorlax EX with 200 plus health or something. Now, we have Starmie. What is good about Starmie? The fact that it's only 2 energy, it's got a 0 retreat cost, so very easily retreating the 130 Starmie. Now, but it's weak to electric, so it's really bad, right? It's not that big of a deal. The Pikachu's going to deal 90 plus 20 damage, so it's 110 damage, and the Starmie survives it. You have to 2-shot it. So if we weren't weak to electric energy, we would still get 2-shot by the Pikachu. Now, the weakness comes into play when the Pikachu only has 2 benched Pokemon instead of 3. So the Pikachu would deal 60 damage times 2, which would be 120 damage. The Starmie would survive it. But because the Starmie is weak to a Pikachu type, that's why the Pikachu with just 2 bench Pokemon will be able to 2-shot the Starmie. So by playing Starmie, you're essentially making the Pikachu deck more consistent, not relying on their 3rd Pokemon in order to kill you. But you take 1 hit, then try to pull out the Starmie for another one. And let's see what other cards are being played with this. We have Articuno EX to help tank some damage for the Starmie, or, you know, pull out Starmie after dealing that 90 damage. And you could also get lucky with the Misty. Maybe Misty Articuno combo. 30% are not playing Articuno. Now, let's see if anyone are playing solo Starmie. Let's highlight that. We have Greninja being played in this version, but it's not prevalent enough to be listed on the stats yet. We're going to be expanding the stats to show more. And what else we have here? We have Articuno in Starmie. We have Golduck in Starmie. That's interesting. We have Aerodactyl in Bruxish. You what, mate? What the heck? Aerodactyl is very funny. It is 2 energy to flip a coin. If heads, you just shuffle their active Pokemon back in the deck, and if they have no bench, you just win the entire game. That's crazy. And let's see what else is here. I think that's pretty much for the Starmie deck. Now, things are going to get wild. This is where we jump from Tier 3 to Tier 1. What the heck? How could that be a possibility? Well, Tier 2 at the moment, I'm going to do the online calculator for you so you understand how this tier list is working. Tournament topping decks, we have it essentially set to if you are at least 7.5% of the meta, 7.5% of tournament topping deck lists, you would be considered a Tier 2 deck. But since nothing is there, but you know, Starmie's almost there, it could get there within a few tournaments. Only then do we have it set to Tier 2. The most important thing, if you don't agree with the tier numbers specifically, is looking at the power levels. The power levels are simply an objective number, and how we're adjusting the tiers is just wherever the power level leads them to be. So for example, Tier 1 with the power level at least 70, let's see, 70 divided by 400 tournament topping deck lists, that's about 17.5% of the meta. So you tell me if that's fair. Tier 1, 17.5%, Tier 2 being just a 7.5%. The problem is Pikachu and Mewtwo are just way too dominant. So if you take the 134 divided by 400, Pikachu EX, which is accounting for the size of the tournaments, we're taking just the top 30% based off the tournament size. Pikachu EX is 33.5% of tournament topping decks. And then if you add Mewtwo to it, that means between Pikachu and Mewtwo, they're about 60% plus of the entire tournament topping meta. This is not just decks entering the tournament. These are decks entering and then topping the tournaments. Because as I said earlier, Mewtwo's actually more prevalently played than Pikachu, but Pikachu is topping more. Now, let's look at the Mewtwo. These are the top 2 decks you want to be building right now, but the new set 2, the mini set that's coming out, is coming out in about 2.5 weeks. and that could very likely change up this meta. If the mini set does not add any new real decks to the tier list, what I think it will do is give us a way to search for an evolution Pokemon. And I think that's one of the benefits the Pikachu EX has, is that it's a base Pokemon and you don't have to search for anything. But even with Mewtwo, if you could search for the Gardevoir, search for a Charizard piece, all these other decks are going to skyrocket. I do expect Pikachu to not have good longevity. I think it's going to be dropping in value even by the next mini set. So do take that in consideration. It's a complete guess, though. I don't know for sure. So let's look at Mewtwo. Holy moly, why is this deck so good? Well, we have a base Pokemon at 150, the size of a Snorlax, eating up damage, and then we could even use the base Mewtwo, the non-EX version, so it doesn't give them 2 points, and only a retreat costs a 2, where Snorlax is a 3. Well, Snorlax is heavier. 269 pounds. Let's see a Snorlax real quick, because this is really relevant for a meta video here. We have Snorlax at 1,000 pounds, yet they have the same health. Makes a lot of sense. So what's good about this is consistently dealing that 150 damage. You have something like a Charizard, though. So a big question could be like, why is this better than Charizard? I don't understand. Well, the Charizard, you have to detach 2 energy, and then it's going to, the next turn, you go up to 3 energy, then you have to wait. You could slash them, so it's going to be 200, then a 60 slash. Mewtwo is going to do 150 every single turn. So that's the benefit of that, and also the fact that you don't have to evolve into Mewtwo to have the Mewtwo on field. So how are you detaching 2 psychic energy and dealing 150 every single turn? Well, you have the Gardevoir giving you energy from the bench. So when you detach 2 to deal 150, your next turn you're going to have 2 energy, but you're going to attach 1 from the energy zone, giving you a 3rd. And then you're going to attach your 4th one with the Gardevoir, giving you that 4th energy. Every single turn, blast for 150. Now, here's the crazy thing about the meta. If Mewtwo were 160 health, or let's say 170, because 160 would make Giovanni a lot better to be playing, even at 160 or 170 health, I then think Charizard would skyrocket in value, because no longer would a Mewtwo be able to one-shot another Mewtwo. So the fact that Mewtwo does well against Mewtwo, it makes the deck even better, where you don't have to rely on the Charizard dealing that 200 damage in order to one-shot the Mewtwo. And then here are the other cards being played here. Let's zoom in and see. Look at that. Oh, first place, 300 player event. That is nuts. You got the sample deck list here if you want to check it out yourself. What else do we have here? We have a Jinx randomly being played in here. Jinx is starting to go up in value. It's not prevalently being played enough. The stats about 1 week of data, if there's enough data. So the stats are very quick to be tracking the trends of what's doing well at the decks. But I am seeing some early Jinx players. Why we want to play Jinx? Deals 20 more damage for each energy attached to the opponent's active Pokemon. So if there is a Pikachu, it's going to deal 70. This will essentially 2-shot a Pikachu. I guess that could be the benefit of the Jinx, where you're going to have to, as you're building up your Gardevoir on the bench, you just poke them a little bit with the Jinx, sure, instead of a base Mewtwo. Or you could also play the base Mewtwo. That's fine. And then let's see this deck. Okay, you got that. Anything interesting here? Another Jinx. So that's 2 different Jinx players just playing 1 Jinx. I joke with this in Gia in the background, and the joke is I feel like with this base set of Pokemon, I feel like people are hard optimizing rock, paper, scissors. It really feels like the game is so basic right now. You can pretty much get away with anything. So it's really funny for people to, I welcome it. I just think it's funny. I'm not trying to make fun of it. I do like analytics, but people are like, oh, the Jinx players have a 2.5% extra win rate, but the fewer players that are played are maybe better than the other players. So it does not mean that Jinx is better, but they just had a better performance. Yeah, that's just the situation. If your deck looks like this, you're going to be fine. You have a good version of Mewtwo. You're going to be clapping. This is the most prevalent way to play the deck. Now, let's get to the best deck. The best deck is split up into 4 different ways to play it. What? Let's go. Pikachu EX, the best deck. Why is this deck so good? Look how broad the stats are. You haven't seen any other deck we looked at already go to the 3rd row of this many cards because of what a clapper deck this is. So again, this deck does so well because it very quickly, for 2 energy, deals 90 damage with 120 health, and you do not have to evolve the Pikachu. You don't have to rely on a Gardevoir building up your energy. It just 2 turns, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. You're going to deal 60 to 90 damage. So the case of this deck is being able to 2-shot anything. So it doesn't even focus on one-shotting, just very quickly 2-shot any Pokemon, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, and you are done. So what are the 4 different ways to play this deck? So the most prevalent way to play the deck is going to be with a Zapdos. Now, the thing about Zapdos is it being 75% usage, it's being played with the other cards or with just the Zapdos. So we will get into the nitty-gritty of the deck list in a second. So for example, a Zebra Strike deck would play Pikachu, Zapdos, and Zebra Strike. And then you have Electrode version, and then you have Raichu. So the 4 versions are just Zapdos and Pikachu, Zebra Strike with Pikachu and Zapdos, Electrode with Pikachu and Zapdos, and Raichu with Pikachu and Zapdos. And some of the builds may remove Zapdos, but those are essentially the 4 main builds. So let's focus on why we want to play any of those 4 builds. Well, the more electric-based Pokemon we have, the higher chance we have of the Pikachu being able to deal that 90 damage. But sometimes 60 is enough. So if you go overboard on too many Pokemon, your deck's going to not have enough supporter cards to, maybe deal extra damage. A Giovanni would maybe randomly be better, or being able to get a heal off in the mirror match could be really good, or randomly red carding a good hand from the opponent, or a pivotal switch with their main Pokemon to their bench with a Sabrina. So let's see some random tournament recent tops here. Here's one without the Zapdos. So we'll be counting them up, not really counting them, but just pointing them out. So Zebra Strike, what's so good about this, is going to be able to deal 30 damage to anywhere, any of your opponent's Pokemon. So what we could do here is you could type in the Zebra Strike just like that. And yeah, being able to deal 30 to the bench, that is quite nuts. And I think I was talking earlier about the Hitmonlee. Yeah, this does not do the effect damage. I'm more confident that it does not do the weakness damage, right? But again, clarify in the comments for me if you can for me. Now, with the Zebra Strike, what about people not playing it? Now, some people are saying, why is Pinchurin being played? Because if we go on the top cards page, this is a really good objective way to see the most popular cards being used in order of tournament topping decks. And people could not understand why Pinchurin's being used. Simply, it has 70 health. That's it. It's a meat shield. 70 health. It's going to protect. There's really no other reason. It's electric, so it helps boost up the Pikachu's damage. There you go. It's like a battery. Now, moving on, let's click on not using Zeb Strike. Not using Zeb Strike, we have a deck like this with Raichu. So what's so good about the Raichu? Well, the Raichu could be used with Lieutenant Surge. Move all of your electric energy from your bench Pokemon to your Raichu, so you could very quickly, after clapping them up with Pikachu, just pull out a Raichu for a finishing 140 damage attack. And what's crazy about the 140 damage is when paired up with the Giovanni, that is a one-shot onto the Mewtwo. So, it's going to be like a mid-late game attack. So as you build up later, you got that random Giovanni in your hand, pair it up with the Raichu, and then wham, bam, thank you, ma'am them. Now, you have to be careful. The Giovanni's a supporter card, and so is Lieutenant Surge, so they cannot be used in the same turn. And then it's also worth noting, if you didn't notice this, everyone's playing Professor Research. As you can see, popularity, whether on the search at the top cards page, draw 2 is too good. But I would encourage you, if you're a Yu-Gi-Oh player, the best thing to do in Yu-Gi-Oh is to draw before making a play, because it gives you more choices, right? Drawing in Pokemon can be a big mistake. If you draw without thinking, you just turned off all your other supporter cards, and maybe using another supporter card like Sabrina would have been better. Now, it does not turn off cards like Pokeball. And also, if you're pairing up the Professor Research with a Pokeball, you want to ensure that you maybe have the highest chance to draw something like a stage 1 or stage 2 Pokemon. You really need a Charmeleon or a Charizard. You're not going to activate Professor Research before Pokeball. You want to thin out the deck. The deck size is only 20 cards, so even pulling one card out before using the Professor Research is a big deal. So just very important. Don't just draw 2, then make your plays from there. So what else is good here? And why is the Zapdos EX very good? Is it a mandatory card to play? I think that's a big question because it's an EX. What I would encourage you to do if you don't play, if you don't have Zapdos, you do not have to go out of your way to pull it. So I would click on this, not having Zapdos EX, and then highlight all the decks that don't have it. Look, looks like Magneton is a replacement for not playing Zapdos EX. I'm very happy I brought this up. There you go. So the question is, hey, I don't have Zapdos. Okay, play Magneton with Lieutenant Surge and Raichu as being a good way to have the deck be a cheaper way to play. That is nice to see. So we learned about the Zebra Strike. We learned about the Raichu. What about the Electrode? What's going on with Electrode? Well, very simple 70 damage. 70 plus 70 is 140, so it's able to kill a Pikachu. It's not big enough to kill something like a Mewtwo, but if you have one Giovanni, it's going to be that perfect 150 to kill a Mewtwo. It's got 80 health. It also works with the Lieutenant Surge. So this is going to be a Raichu, Electrode, or Electabuzz to put all the energy into the active spots. So this could help finish off a duel or just whip out the Electrode early and just slam people for 70 damage every turn is why you'd want to be playing that. So without using any of the filters, let's highlight until we see a recent Electrode deck. It is the least popular way to play it. 77% are not playing it. So let's see what's good about these deck lists. We have one Zapdos EX with Zeb Strike. We have the Raichu with Zapdos. This is going to be the expensive way to play it. Yep, with the double Zapdos. We got double Zapdos and Zebra Strike, double Zapdos and Zebra Strike. Again, the Zebra Strike is the most popular way to play it, as you see on the stats up there. And oh boy, where is the, there you go. So Pikachu, Zapdos, and Electrode, top 16 of a 174 player event. Let's see if I can find another one within this. There you go, another one back to back. 174 player, another, maybe they were friends and they joined the same event, yeah? And then here is another Zeb Strike. So what do you get from this? What is the best deck in the entire game after looking at the tier list? Well, it is going to be Pikachu EX with Zapdos using Zeb Strike. That at the current moment is the #1 deck in the game. Then everything else is just a variation. But as I said, the game's so basic and also very random. You do not need that to do the best. And my prediction, and tell me if you think my prediction is a good one, that the mini set is going to very likely have a way to search for an evolution Pokemon. Will that make Zebra Strike a lot better, being able to search for Zeb Strike? I'm not so sure. I think it's going to simply boost up the other decks. So here is the total tier list. Every other deck here is using stage 1, possibly even stage 2 Pokemon. Some of them, not like, you know, Starmie, just stage 1. And I think with a way to search for an evolution, we're going to see the meta become much more balanced. What I would hate to see, though, is Mewtwo become even more powerful with the way to search for Gardevoir. Is that a possibility? Probably much more, because Mewtwo's probably only losing when you don't have Gardevoir. Because here's my opinion. This is not objective information, but I feel like out of all these decks, if they draw perfect, I think Mewtwo's the best deck if they draw perfect. If they have a good meat shield at the start, double Mewtwo EX and a way to set up Gardevoir immediately as they, you know, turn after turn, just evolving. I think Mewtwo is just the best deck, right? But because of the consistency of that happening, not being as consistent, that's why Pikachu at the moment is your #1 deck with its 4 different ways to play it. There you go. Hop on over onto the top decks page. Check out the other decks. Again, spicy decks. You can look at the first place decks. You don't have to play the tippity top decks. It is a casual, fun game. Have fun. Play Lapras if you want. So what that Pikachu is going to electrocute you for even more damage? It's not a big deal. A Cincino deck? I've never even seen this. What the heck is this? What does this do? Do the wave. You see, there you go. That is the purpose of Pokemon Pocket. Do the wave. There you go. And I'll see you all in the Discord. Make sure you invite whales in the Discord. There are a lot of whales in the Discord. Every day, a lot more whales are adding their friend code. So if you tried to add someone earlier and it didn't work, just try again. People are clearing up their approved list, and then they're also cleaning up their friends list. So as soon as you fill up your friends list with good whales, and then new sets come out, you're going to be set on the Wonder Pick for super rare cards. All right, that's all I got for you. Let me know if you enjoyed this video. It's been a long one. We are out.